Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It is amazing today that I have got the beautiful Katherine Edwards with me. And for once, it's me doing the interviewing, which is even better. I'm really excited. I have been wanting to pin this lady down so that we could get more of an insight into her. And she's probably going to tell me, oh, people have heard all of this before, but that's not the point. My tribe is very, very different. And I would really just like to give a beautiful introduction into you today, Katherine, and just kind of allow people to see what it is, because the version that they see on YouTube, there is so much more to you. So much more to you. And I know a lot of my followers absolutely love your vibration. I get so many messages saying, oh, Katherine's so lovely. I'd love to meet her, kind of thing. And it's beautiful that they're picking up that vibration. But what I love about you most, Katherine, is that you are a dark horse. There is a lot behind, there's a lot that you do and that you can do that a lot of people wouldn't know about. So I guess first and foremost, maybe just give a little introduction to you, and then what I would like us to do, if it's okay, is kind of step back through, because I know you're ex-corporate and things like that. I'd just like to almost go through a little bit of a journey with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Sounds like fun. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure. I made a commitment to myself, sort of, when I started this journey, that I would only really be speaking and spending my time with people that really uplift me, and you are right up there at the top of the list. So thank you so much for having me on, and for anyone who's listening today. And as I say, my name's Katherine Edwards. I'm from the UK as well as Lucy, and living in the middle of the countryside. I've got my dogs on the sofa with me here. I've got my cats there. I'm a massive animal lover, mum to two humans and lots of four-legged creatures. And really just taking everything by the gut. I've none of what I'm doing now is planned, Lucy. So I'm just taking each day as it comes and really going with what I feel drawn to do, rather than any pre-planning, which is hysterical, because it's my corporate career, I was a project manager. So yeah, throwing all that out and just seeing where life takes me at the moment.
And I think that's what I love the most about you, Katherine, because we are so resonant in our journeys and our stories, but it's this surrendering to your intuition, and when things feel good, when things don't feel so right, and you absolutely honor that and embody that, which is why I feel so many people are drawn towards you, because it's authentic.
Oh, thank you. I think it's so important to be, and I think it's one of the advantages of getting older, is you do get to know yourself a lot better and feel more comfortable in your own skin, because there's no way I'd have done this. When I look at the people in their 20s and 30s doing this, and I'm thinking, wow, good on you to have that level of self-knowledge at that age. It's taken me quite a long while to get there, and I'm still on the journey and having such fun with it, Lucy. But, I think what this has taught me over the years is really not to take yourself too seriously. So important.
Yeah. We've got to ride the waves, haven't we?
Yeah.
What just popped up then, I was like, yeah, we just got to ride our broomsticks.
I've got my broomstick in the background. I have been given a few of them. I've even got my witch's cats, and of course I'm surrounded by black cats, so that just about says it all. And it's not easy. We can sit here laughing about it now, but it is hard at times. I've had a few real knocks recently, and luckily it's really funny when I meet you and when I met Wendy, and we all say the same thing. We've all got, that's interesting. And that's something I've come to develop, that attitude, through all the years of self-studies, because naturally I'm a very reactive person. And I think coming from, 3 children, I was a twin sister, very, very different, an elder sister, and I had to be quite loud to get noticed, as a child. And even through school, when you go through school as twins, you're labeled as twins, so you have to be, you have to find some way of being seen as an individual. So I'm naturally quite a reactive person, so I've really had to work very, very hard on myself to develop, and it's still obviously very much work in process, this much more objective view on life. And I've spent the last few years saying that is interesting how I'm reacting to certain triggers and situations, really interesting to how other people are reacting and everything. And I think when you work like you and I do, when we're so connected with animals, you've got to work on yourself like that, because you can transfer so much rubbish to animals if you're not careful. So you can have the best intent in the world of having your own animals or working professionally with them, but if you're not working on yourself, you can actually end up doing a lot more harm than good. So it's really important.
I love that you've brought that connection in. I absolutely love it, because what I see with a lot of people is that they are, they're very, there are some people out there that prefer their dog to themselves. Let's be honest about it. It's very true. I see it in the horse world as well. People will spend more on their horse, looking after their horse and doing for their horse than they will for themselves. And actually, you are bang on. We're conscious creations, which means we are exchanging. We don't just energy exchange human to human. It's any conscious being, like we spoke about last time with the trees.
Yeah.
When the branches have fallen off and we're picking them up, giving them healing and whatever, and sending them love, it's exactly the same principle. Any conscious creation will come off the back of it. But what you said just before then about being reactive, Katherine, I love that you've been vulnerable enough to say that, because I'm very open about it. I used to be a hothead. Let's call it what it was. I was a hothead, super reactive, 0 to 60 in like 0.1 of a second, that kind of thing. And a few people that have been speaking to me about potentially coming on my programs recently have been saying the one thing that they would like to get on top of is how reactive that they have been. So I feel as if we're going through a bit of a shift right now, where we are starting to look at, really honestly where we have come from. And I think personally, I'm so grateful. So how do you feel now, looking back at your younger self? And you've given a couple of reasons, one of a twin, 3 children, had to be seen, kind of had to do stuff to make yourself stand out, and completely reasonable at all of that. How do you feel now, looking back at how reactive you used to be compared to this person that you are now? Because although I know you still have reactive moments, as we all do, I'm sensing from you it's a far cry from what it used to be like.
Yeah, it is. I just see it, to be honest, I don't look back a lot, Lucy. I see each part of your journey. One, I don't remember a lot from huge periods of my life. I can't remember a lot about. I mean, it's comical. I went off traveling around Australia, one of the best times of my life. I went around the world, but spent most time in Australia. And my husband wasn't even with me, but I was writing letters back to him time, and he knows more about where I went than I did. But when I look back, what I find really interesting, when it really reminds me, is my family, my close family. I'm not talking about my children, my sisters, my parents, etc. Other people who've known me for a long while. What's really interesting, Lucy, is an awareness that they don't see the new me. They've just got programmed in the old me. And that's very stuck. So, once you've got a label, it's really difficult to drop it. Wow. With a lot of people. And it's funny, I had a situation with a family member a few months ago, and it was hysterical because they reacted so extremely, but their criticism was about me being reactive. And I was just sitting there calmly, and it was like a comedy show, because I could see it and they couldn't see it at all. They couldn't see that everything they were blaming me on was where they were at now. And I'm just not that person anymore. So I don't look back on it really and think wasted years or anything like that, because I think it was just all part of the journey of where you are and where you need to be. And if you came out of the womb knowing everything, it would be a pretty boring life, I think.
Oh, it would. It really would. And I love that you intuitively, so I've done a post on one of my Instagram accounts this morning, my business account, all about deleting the old version.
Right. Oh, how funny. Yeah.
You're just tapping into that. So thank you for doing that. That's amazing. Cat. Oh. Yeah. I can see the pony in the background as well.
Yeah, they're coming out. They're going up to their other field and everything. I've got someone helping me, so it's just lovely. It's just gorgeous. So if I'm looking around, just checking she's getting past the house properly. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? About how how people do it. And it's so funny because if you were to ask my sisters, or my mum might have changed recently because I've spent a lot more time with her since my dad died.
Yeah.
But it's so funny, you know, my mum said to me on those occasions, "Oh, no one can change their personality," and I was like, "You absolutely can."
Wow.
And I have, but I even notice it with really old friends and everything. It's interesting, and it makes me realize how many people are really not present with other humans, animals, nature, because they're still stuck in the past. So they're not really interacting on where you both are right here, right now.
Yeah.
They're reacting based on past patterns, past memories, etc. And I find that really fascinating.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've noticed, and this might resonate with you, they're actually reacting based on where they are.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a projection rather than a, oh, this is what you used to be like. They're kind of like pulling in the old memories of the past, but projecting based on where they are with themselves, which is a fascinating dynamic. And that's a perfect illustration what you've just spoken through of the different levels of consciousness that we're currently living in, right?
Yeah.
We're living in multiple paradigms at the moment. And we've never quite clearly been able to see them as clearly as we can right now. And it's like, wow, how can that person that I'm sat right next to not see that? Oh, wow. And it's just because they're just not ready to do that. It's fascinating.
It really is fascinating. And that's where the whole face nappies and everything have been perfect, because it's giving you an instant visual of, like, you can't hide behind that, you know, because actions do speak more than words. And so how people have been actually behaving and actioning has sort of overridden what they might be saying.
Yeah.
And that has just been really, really helpful, I think, but quite painful as well, because people that you might have thought that you had a lot in common with, coming to that realization that at a core values you're actually on different pages, is quite interesting.
Yeah, the last 2 years have been, you know, because we're just stepping into the 2-year mark now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here in the UK anyway, we got locked down, and the last 2 years have really shown the people that are determined to evolve and the people that are determined to cling on to the past. That's kind of the split I see at the moment. And it's not necessarily, I don't see it as good, bad, or ugly, because if we'd all gone at the same time, there probably would have been riots.
Yeah.
Rather than protests and stuff, there probably would have been riots. And I do trust that it is divinely orchestrated. However, when we then look at that from an animal perspective, because the animals are going through the same shifts as us, right?
Exactly.
They really are. And this is what I love about you, because what I do with humans, you do with animals. I mean, obviously you work with humans as well, and you help in many, many ways, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But what you really get this relationship between, whether it be a horse or a dog or a cat or whatever animal it is. And I just, something, obviously, when I was sitting down, wondering how this was going to go, I was like, okay, so I can quite clearly, because people can speak to me and they can say, oh, I'm evolving away from this person, this doesn't feel vibrationally right now, and obviously they don't use those words, but that's how I interpret what they say. Like, how does that show up where animals are concerned? Because an animal can't really go, oh yeah, I don't really like you as an owner anymore, like you're not feeding me the right things, or you're not doing the right things anymore, I'm going to trot off over here because this person gets it. Like, how does that show up? Does it show up in behavior, or how does that show up?
That's such a good question. In so many words, in behavior. So just like with humans, you'll have the reactive animals, you'll have the flight, fight, freeze response, and some will really shut down, some will react in more and more extreme behavior that will people put down as behavioral problems, but also in physical illnesses, because I know you know, are very hot on the emotional links to disease, and we see that a huge amounts. But with animals, it's even more complex, because not only are they dealing with their own emotional issues and then the diseases that can manifest, but also with their humans' emotional issues, because the human energy field is very, very dominant. If you're looking, let's take horses, because we're both into horses, a typical horse in a stable yard, it's so, it depends what mood. I might say interesting, I might just say bloody frustrating, because most people that have animals nowadays have done so little research into what those animals' needs are. And so you hear that they'll put them in posh stable yards, and they might have solariums and wash down areas where they're cross-tied whilst they're washed down with cold water, or if they're really lucky, warm water. And oh, I've got a nice big stable, but the horse doesn't want to be in the stable, particularly in the storm, trust me. It's the last place they choose to get in. So a lot of the decisions, and they're like, I don't understand, my horse is so spoiled, I do everything for it. And they're projecting their lack onto their animals unintentionally, because they love them to bits. But it's like, how many times do they sit down and say, what does my horse want? What does my horse need? Behaviorally, physiologically, you know, company wise. So I see the whole time companionship with horses. Horses spot, they're herd animals. They need to be in a herd, not on their own with a horse. The amount of times I hear, well, it's fine because they've got a horse in the field next door that they can see. Well, let's lock you in a cell or a cage and let you see your next human next door and see how you get on without any physical interaction. See when that lion approaches you, how you feel shut in there on your own with no protection. See how well you sleep with no, because where anyone who's got horses know that, you know, there'll always be one on guard whilst the others are resting, and then they'll swap round and everything. So the animals, they're just having to cope with so much. And this isn't a blame point of view to the humans, but I do find it a little bit, more than a little bit frustrating now, how little time people that. If people put as much time into looking about the nutritional needs of a horse, and I don't mean going to your local feed manufacturer and seeing what they're going to sell you. You know, anyone who's feeding their horses soya, I don't care how many nutritionists have said it's good for you, it's not. When in the world would a horse ever have access to soya? But you know, if they spent as much time on looking at what their horses needed, behaviourally wise, physically wise, environment wise, as they did on their dressage lessons, then most of their animals' problems would disappear. But you know, I've never heard a horse say, I really look forward to my dressage lesson. Now, it doesn't mean they can't sometimes enjoy it, but you know, actually that's so far down their list of priorities. So I think for me, it's a massive reflection, Lucy, of what's going on at the world as a large. You know, how much are we really looking at the good? We talk a lot about humankind even, but why we talk about humankind rather than all creatures, great and small? Because you can't do something for a human and have an impact on another species without there being some sort of energetic, karmic, environmental consequence of that.
I love what you have said there, and I had so many questions popping off all at the same time. I was like, oh my god, this is so exciting, because obviously I'm a rider. I used to have my own horses. I love horses so much. I do a lot of Reiki and a lot of healing on horses. I absolutely love it. I can tap into their energy when I'm riding them. I can tap into their thoughts, and quite often I'll get on a horse and I'll be like, what's happened? Why is he sad? Like my riding instructor, she's amazing, but she's always like, can you just do me a favor and just go and figure out what's going on with this horse, because he just seems a bit sad or something like that. And I can tap into their frequency, which is absolutely amazing. But that's me. Yeah. And obviously me and you are very aligned with this. So to somebody out there that has got a flighty horse, for example, you know, pretty well behaved in the field or in the stable or whatever, but maybe when they get on it, it's a little bit crazy or something like that, where would they start in where to begin to maybe bring some more peace into that animal? Or it could be a cat, or like whichever animal you choose.
Well, let's take the horse example, and this would be very similar for dogs. So the first thing you always want to rule out is pain.
Yeah.
And as a therapist, I haven't been out and about to see as many horses, not because none of my clients have been worried at all about lockdowns or restrictions, but purely I just haven't had the time. Yeah. And I've got some trained people up now that can go and do some of it for me. But I would say the vast majority of horses that I see, their tack is causing pain, even when they've had a saddler out. Take flash nose bands, the cruelest thing ever. You know, if I tied, before you went out for your jogs in the woods that you put on Instagram, if I tied your nose and mouth shut so you couldn't breathe properly, how good a friend would you think I was?
Yeah.
So it's frightening how much pain, and you do not have to be an expert to check it out. So when your horse is bridle on, check. Have you ever worn a pair of sunglasses or something that just a bit too tight here or a bit too tight here or a bit of pressure there? And it's really painful, and it's something really minimal. But, you know, suddenly if you've got the marks there and you end up with a headache, well, check for pressure points where the buttocks are, check where the bits join, where there's pressure points. Never, ever, ever, ever put a flash noseband or even a drop or a grack or anything on your horse, because if you have to use one of those to ride them, fundamentally your relationship's broken anyway. So people say I have to because my horse is this, and I'm like, well, if you did that to a dog, you'd be arrested for cruelty. So pain. And so one of the first things I do with my clients is to teach them how their horse is in pain. Because if you were to go to the doctor, Lucy, and say you had really bad stomach pain, and if you knew that if you went to a doctor, that the first thing they were going to do is sedate you and shove a tube down your throat, you might be reluctant to tell the doctor you were in pain. And this is the same with our animals. So sometimes when you've got a vet come in, they can pick up the intent, and there's some brilliant vets around, but vets have a certain range of tools and techniques that they can use to diagnose, and most of them are very invasive, and people want quick answers. So an animal's only going to tell you in pain. Horses are herd animals, and when they're in the wild, they're prey animals. So if you've got a herd of horses or zebras out in the wild, which one is the predator going to go for? The one that shows that they're the weak link. So if they're showing pain, or they're lame, or they're showing that they're giving off pheromones because their microbiome's out of things, they know they are the weak link and they're vulnerable, and the predators can home in on that. We're a predator to a horse. We are a predatory animal. So they will only show you where their issues are if they trust you to make the right choices for them. So look at what we're seeing with a lot of the little people now coming out. How many stories, consistent theme, they couldn't tell people, there wasn't anyone they could trust. This is what our animals do. Are you going to listen to them? If your horse is behaving like that, it's either pain, it can be nutritional deficiencies as well. So if you've got mineral imbalances, deficiencies of certain vitamins and minerals, that can affect the way your nerves fire and put you on high alert. So, you know, most people know that if you give a child orange squash or Cocoa Pops, they're going to be a bit hyper. Exactly the same with our horses. But also if any animal, whether it's a human or other thing, is missing certain key nutrients, then their body's in a natural state of stress. And it also can be how safe they feel with the person on them as well. You know, how safe do they feel with that? Are they being taken away from their friends? Are they comfortable where you're riding them? Because horses should be allowed to react. And most horse riders nowadays, they expect their horses not to react, but they're a prey animal. You don't want to be on a horse that's so shut down, it's not relaxed into their environment. So you want them to react in a non-extreme way and to come down. So just like a person that's chronically stressed, and you and I know all about this because we've both been there, done that, got the t-shirt. When you're chronically stressed, your adrenal glands do not shut off quickly. Absolutely. And that's the same. If your horse is reacting to stress quite extremely, you know there's an adrenal imbalance, and that can be caused by loads of different things, some of which we've mentioned. And so therefore, you need to be honest with yourself and say, my horse is in a chronic state of stress. Now I've got to work with someone to work out what is causing that. Is it pain? Is it nutrition? Is it environment? Is it the type of work I'm doing with them? You know, etc. Because again, you know, let's take dressage, and I'm just taking this as an example, people, so don't jump in and think. I'm not saying every horse hates dressage. I'm not saying that. But horses are not designed to go in. It's like I used to be a gymnast. Gymnastics up to a certain level is good for you. Then when you start pushing your body too much, it starts breaking. It's the same with our animals. They're designed to move in certain ways. And anytime you as a rider are putting your horse in an outline, how often do we hear that? Well, I'm not running along with you, Lucy, and putting your head down when you're jogging and shoving your bum in, things like this. I'm letting your body find its balance. Yeah. But we think as horse riders that we know better, and we should find their balance for them.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah,
Disaster.
that's really, really fascinating. And I can imagine lots of horse riders out there will be being triggered to
Very
the max
triggered.
right
Yeah.
now, because, but it's good that we're having these conversations. And like Katherine said, she's not saying don't do it. What she's saying is get your horse as comfortable as possible, so when you ask it to do it, it's got this relationship that it's going to trust that it's for a certain period of time or whatever. Because that's what it boils down to. And I love the fact that you brought in the children as well, because you're bang on, Katherine. We've gone through a period of cleansing on the planet where children are going, this happened to me, that happened to me, the reason I didn't speak is this is why I couldn't open my mouth, I didn't feel safe. And you're absolutely spot on to bring that into the animal world. Absolutely spot on. And it actually begs me to ask another question. Do animals, like we have spiritual, so there's spiritual healing that we need to go through, do animals can animals go through the same? So it's kind of like on a spiritual level that they have to do the heat, or we have to remind them how to do the healing kind of thing. Is that possible?
Absolutely, really, really possible. And they can innately do it, but being in a human environment can suppress that a lot. Because, look at my dogs now, they're in an office, it's got Wi-Fi, they've got they're sort of trapped in with my energy, can't get themselves away. Dogs will naturally dig and chew as their natural grounding side of things. But, people saying, how can I stop my dog chewing? And well, you don't want to stop your dog. You might want to stop them chewing your couch, but give them something appropriate, because they need to chew, because that's very, very releasing and grounding for them. So on a spiritual level, absolutely. And they're so natural at it, Lucy. I mean, this. All we have to do is get out of their way and stop micromanaging them, which is why everything that I'm doing that's why I'm a herbalist, and I work with zoopharmacognosis, which is animals self-medicating. We as humans always think we know best, and we so don't. They know best if we give them the choice. And most of us over the last few years have seen what it's like to have choice taken away from us. I mean, I'm really lucky. I've grown up, I've got to this stage, and I've never lived in a communist country. I've been free to make virtually every choice I want to myself. I can still remember the joy of leaving home, being able to think I can eat what I want when I want, I still can remember that excitement. And however good animal parents we are, we make virtually every decision for them. So how many people do you in your life, however much you love them and like them, but how many would you trust to make every decision about what you eat, who you interact with, where you're locked in, what equipment you have on, what you wear, how to, don't be silly. Of course, this girth doesn't hurt when I do it up. Don't stop being naughty. And okay, let someone come and yank your belt and see how you feel.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like, it's half them. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I've got loads of animals, but I'm just saying, with a little bit more awareness and understanding, do you know your dog, your horses? It's less with cats, because cats can tend to go off and do what they want when they want. But with a dog and a horse, we all have our natural cycles of the day, and yours might be different to mine. Times when you feel very energetic, times when you like to exercise, how long do you need after a meal to let your meal? It's very individual for people. But if we go and get a dog or a horse, they might be fast asleep digesting their breakfast, and I'm like, come on now, we're off for a walk. And then they're like, my horse is being rude, it won't let me catch them, or it's slow coming in from the field. Well, it was deep in its meditation, whatever you want to call it in horse world, and you've decided it's got to come in now, wake up straight away now, bang, 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 bang. That's like you sitting there and be halfway through your medication, and me coming and putting a lever around your neck and dragging you into a spinning class.
Yeah.
You might not be ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that perspective, Katherine. I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh my gosh, this is just such an interesting conversation. Because it is for me, because I often, I'll always, before I ride, I tend to go down and just make sure I give them some love, and I give them a little, I have a little bit of a, not a healing session per se, but I connect in with their energy, and I'm like I'm your friend. If there's something that you've got to show me, and we'll work together on this. And it's something, because that's what I do with myself before I go and run or whatever, and I connect and I say, bring me whatever signs I need. It's actually very beautiful that I have the time to do that with the animals. But how many people would even think about that? Because I just do it intuitively.
Yeah.
I don't consciously think, oh, I need to go there to make sure the horse is ready, to make sure he or she knows that it's time to like G up and we're going to go for a ride or whatever. I've never consciously done that. I've done it intuitively. So let's say, for example, somebody out there is watching and they've got horses, or maybe they work at a stables or something like that. How can they do the best for the horses in that situation, so that they can prepare them, or maybe even dogs or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, how can we as humans, obviously you've mentioned working on yourself is an absolute must. If you want your animals to be peaceful, clean your own energy field up so that when you're exchanging energy with them, they don't pick up your stuff, it's just their stuff that they need to deal with, which I think is very, very fair. What other tips could you give us so that, you know, we do make the horses experience the best, or we do make the dogs experience the best? Like what can you suggest for us?
Well, perfect that you've covered that bit of clearing your own energy field, because that's so important. The second thing I would say is, remember, you're meant to be having a two-way relationship with that animal. So any conversation is not about me telling you what I want, Lucy, and assuming you're going to agree with it.
No.
I mean, can you imagine how you and I, with our personalities, would react to that? So being really honest with you and saying, are you going and interacting with your animal and having a conversation? Are you asking for permission?
I like that.
So, you know, how often do people come up and go like this? Now, I'm not someone, I don't want to be touched by strangers, thank you. You know, I'm quite sensitive about who comes into my energy field and everything. So don't assume, ask permission. And if you can do it out loud, you can do it in your head, but listen to the answer. Don't just say, I've asked permission, and go and start doing. How many times did we do things to our animals rather than asking them and having it as a two-way conversation? And just by doing that, you will transform your relationship. So when you go up to your horse, say you're in a traditional yard and you might be going up to get your horse from the field or from a stable. Hi, is it all right? Can I come into your space?
Nice.
Because when someone comes to your door, do you expect to open the door and then just to barge straight in? Or do you expect to say, is it all right if I come in? And you might say, hang on a minute, I've just got to put some clothes on or do this. So is it all right? And if you're sensing a hesitation, just wait and let them, because sometimes they'll be in quite a slumber or something like that. And then the other thing I would say is the people that are the best with the animals are almost the ones that know the most. Now, I'm contradicting myself a bit there, so about the research about knowing, for example, if you've got a dog, it's your job to make sure you understand what dogs need to eat. And if anyone thinks that you can pick up a brown biscuit out of a bag for a cat or a dog and keep it healthy, you're deluding yourself, I'm afraid, because I don't believe there's a single listener that's listening to you that really believes that. Might be convenient for them. So the first thing is asking permission, and each thing you're doing. So if you're going to groom your dog or your horse or your cat, is it all right if I brush you? And watch for their reaction. And have that conversation. But if you're going to have that conversation, you've got to be honest with yourself and say, am I going to respect a no from them? And if you're not, you've got to be honest with yourself about what sort of relationship you are building with that animal.
Yeah.
And be honest with yourself, because you can't fool yourself. I mean, there's a lot of people I refuse to do communications with because I know they're not going to honor what the animal says. And I'm like, you know, if I say, like, I'll take my husband, I'm always using him as an example. If I explain to him why it annoys me so much when he leaves his clothes all over the floor and I know I've got visitors coming, and he still does it, then I'm really pissed off with him, because I've explained how it affects me, why it's important to me. And if he doesn't come back and explain why it's important to him, he leaves them in a pile on the floor, then I expect him to take my feelings into consideration. But if I don't tell him it annoys me, I can't expect him to know.
No.
And this is what I'm saying. So if your animal is saying, no, not today, or no, I'm not this. So classic example is riders today, because of the lifestyle a lot of people are pretty obsessed with riding in a school. Now, school is a really hard environment for most horses. It's all right as part of their exercise regime, but not as a huge part of them. A horse is not designed physiologically to be going around in circles. They're not. That's why when you put them in the sea, they can only swim in certain lines. They can't turn directions. So if it's being honest with yourself, you know, just like with yourself, you might love to go in your runs in the woods, but if all you could do was go on the treadmill, it's not the same, is it, Lucy?
No.
And animals need to be out in nature. So the most important I think do is being really honest with yourself, but gentle with yourself as well, because you won't be able to change everything straight away. But just having that honest conversation with your animals and saying, look, this is how it is at the moment. But actually, I'm picking up that you do need some friends to go out with. You do need a yard that can give you turnout. You do need to think. I mean, no horse, I don't care how posh your stable yard is, you cannot keep a horse healthy if it's spending most of its time in its stable. End of. Their digestive system doesn't work properly if they're not moving, their lymphatic system. Now, you can keep a human alive on a bowl of rice a day and they could live to 70. But that doesn't mean they're thriving emotionally, physically, or spiritually. And the same is with our animals. So just because they might look shiny doesn't mean that that's acceptable.
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, clear your own energy and start to have an honest conversation, and be honest, because if there's things you can't change at the moment, tell them.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. And actually something that popped up with me is when I used to have my own horses when I was younger, I always used to say to my horse, like you would a child, I'm going to be riding you in 30 minutes. Not because I knew what I was doing. I certainly had no clue of what we do now back then. However, it just felt right because I needed to be prepared. If I needed to leave the house at a certain time, I needed a bit of time so that I knew, like being told 2 seconds before you're leaving, right, come on, we're going. It sends you off, doesn't it? And I love that, Katherine. So preparing, like, treating the animal as if it is your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, like your child.
Absolutely. So for example, for me, when Vicky or we would go and get the horses and they're going up to their other lovely, gorgeous field for the thing, but this is their time for resting, but this is the time she's got available to come and work for me. So what we do is when we go and take them up, so go up to them and sort of say, look, would you like to go up the other field? And they love it up there, so they've never so far said no. Okay, we're going to go now, is that okay, sort of thing. And if they need a bit of time to wake up because they were deep in slumber, because mine get their herbs in the morning and then they'll go out and rest and be quite having their zen time, then I don't just shove their lead rope on and yank them. But when I do, and don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect, so I've mentioned this on other videos, so I'm really bad at, say, listening to stuff when I'm out walking, because there's so much interesting stuff I want to be listening to. But if you've got an animal, if you're lucky enough like me with some of my animals, and Romeo, one of my horses, if you're lucky enough to have an animal that's not shut down enough to give you feedback, count that as your biggest blessing. So if I'm pulling him too fast, he'll be like, no. And most people say, stop it, that's rude. You're like, no, I was rude. It's all right for me to pull him, but it's not right for him to pull me.
Yeah.
Come on now. And I take mine out for herb walks a lot, browsing along the hedgerows, because there's so many amazing herbs and they know exactly what they need to rebalance themselves. So for me, expecting them, you know, how many horse owners do you know, Lucy, that say it's rude if your horse eats when you're riding it? But that's like you taking them into the best apothecary of medicinal herbs and them knowing exactly what you need and you preventing themselves from putting them back in balance. We're the rude ones. So now I understand you can't let your horse eat the whole way around and they do need exercise as well, but is there a compromise you can have? So I teach people how to offer herbs. So if you can't take your horses to nature, bring nature to them.
Yeah.
You know, so there's always a compromise. There's always something, how small, like I'm just getting a new rescue cat. Oh no, sorry, my things, my Zoom has just crashed. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Sorry, mine isn't recording now because it's just crashed.
I can send it to you, don't worry.
So I'm getting a new rescue cat. She's on her way from Romania as we speak. Now she will have to be kept in for a month while she settles, knows that this is her safe new home, gradually gets to know the others. So what I've done is I've bought a whole load of safe herbs like chamomile and lavender and parsley and mint, and I've put them in her room for her. So she can't go out in nature at the moment, but I can bring a little bit of nature to her to make her feel a bit more comfortable.
Oh, that's so lovely. I love that, Catherine, so much. And actually, what popped into my head when you were talking about the horses was, how many people, and I didn't used to do this very often. I did it every now and again, but not very often. How many horses just take their horse on their lead rein and just allow them to graze?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really beautiful tip that you've given there, because this will allow this relationship, I've got goosebumps all over me, the relationship to start really building between you and your animal again, because you're basically saying, if you're one of those people that are like, no, I don't want you eating when I'm riding you. Okay, don't want you eating when I'm riding you, but I'm going to take you to go and graze on these things when I'm not riding you, so you can fill your boots and you can do it for as long as whatever. And I actually feel this time, because most of us do things because, well, we're hard pushed for time, right? And a bit like what you said, we like to multitask, because multitasking is actually what we've been conditioned to do in this lifetime. But actually, if you can take your horse or your dog or your cat or whatever and actually just allow it to graze and do whatever it naturally needs to do, even if it's just for 30 minutes or an hour a day or something like that, like imagine the relationship that you could build very, very quickly. Because if you look at the dynamics between a child and a parent, as soon as that parent sits on the floor with their child and gives them their full attention, the child's behavior changes.
Absolutely. Right? And it's so beneficial for you as well, because I promise you, you will get just as much out of it. So we're not saying don't ride your horses, absolutely not. And a lot of the horses love to please their humans. They love it. And they do need exercise, and they need a lot more exercise than we're doing them. Yeah. But, the best exercise for a horse is hacking it out and letting it find its own position, its own head carriage, its own body carriage and everything, not forcing it into one. But there's a give and take, and they're grateful for every little bit. So you can say to them, look, I've got 10 minutes to let you graze today. And I'm not saying they understand 10 minutes, but they get the intention, they get the energy, and they get that it's a giving back. And then when I'm going to pull them up, I don't just yank their heads up. I sort of say, right now, unfortunately, we have got to go. I'm sorry, I know you need more, but I really have got to go. So it's still a conversation. And even though they might not like it, they really get it. And then the other thing, Lucy, is consistency. So the biggest problem I see with animal parents is lack of consistency. So they get really enthusiastic and they'll do something. For one, how many times does someone have the physio out and the physio shows them what stretches to do with their horse before they work, and they do it really well for 2 weeks, and then they don't do it again? And I'm really bad at myself. My daughter's always telling me to stretch, and I'm very bad. But it's really important being consistent. So when your horse or dog or whatever know that they can rely on you to do this. So every single morning my horses have their herbs to self-select. That is a given, and therefore they don't overindulge, they self-regulate, that they can manage the things, and it's giving them back some power, rather than it would be much easier for me to just shove it all in their feed. I don't want all my stuff shoved in my feed. I want to say, well, actually, I need that today and I don't need that. So the little things can make a huge difference. And start, like you and I were talking about meditation. When you're standing there with your horse grazing or your dog, you can let them stop and sniff, because I get a nice brisk walk is really important. But equally, so is the space. We talked about the space, the medication. That space is really, really important. And you can use that as your meditation time. So it's a win-win situation.
I love that so much. I've got this vibration of such peace between us and our animals coming through as you're speaking. It really is. It's such a, it's where I would like to be honest.
Yes, it's just wonderful. And when you see how quickly problems recover when you do that, it's really quite incredible, actually. And it starts small, and like you and I always talk about, always concentrate on what you can do, not what you can't. So you do need to, Louise Hay always used to say, if you're sprinkling in your house, you need to get around all the rooms of your house, but it doesn't necessarily matter unless you've got immediate problem which room you start in. But if you've got visitors coming over to dinner, you might want to start in the dining room, you know, because that's going to be where they spend time. And it's the same with that. So, you know, you need to look at your animal's diet, their environment, the chemicals you're using, their social interactions, their stress levels, their choice. But start where you can, start where your priority is and their priority, and then slowly just go around all these areas. And it's an ongoing process of gradually making little changes, and you just get so much benefit out of it yourself, because actually it takes so much stress off the humans, Lucy.
Yes.
Because they know deep down that there's a reason their animals are reacting like this. They know, but they don't know what to do about it. And so suddenly when you sort of say, well, let them tell me what they need to do about it, such a weight off your shoulders.
And you are a rarity, Katherine. You know, it's not as if you are on every street or whatever to be able to help people. You know,
Yeah.
the work that you have done to get where you've got, particularly with animals, is it's so impressive, because some people, you know, they'll kind of like do half a job and they'll get the nutrition bit, but they won't bother about like the other elements of it. And I think it's very, very, very impressive. You know, you are a woman of many, many talents, and it is just, it's so inspiring. It really is inspiring. And I know a lot of my listeners will be blown away by things that they would never have even comprehended. And I've just got one more point I'm going to ask you before we start talking about how people can, you know, reach out to you and things like that. The last month, so during February, I've been working with the humans all around language. So in my 12-month program, the 9th month is all around, you know, what words you should be using. And when you were speaking, I feel it's very, very appropriate to be doing the same with animals. Because I've challenged the people that are on my 12-month program to look at what they're calling their partners or their dogs. And some people were like, oh, I call my dog little shit. And I'm like, okay, and how does that behave? How does your dog behave? Well, it's a little shit. That's why I've called it little shit. And then they're like, oh. So the person that I'm talking about now, she went off and renamed her dog her love bug or something like that. Yeah. And all of a sudden it's become loving. It wants attention. It's playful. And I just really like your opinion on that, Katherine, because for me, it makes so much sense.
It makes so much sense. Now, I must have to say, I have been guilty of when people say, what's your husband do? I sort of say, fuck all, as a joke, just to shut it down. So I must say, I'll put my hand up. I'm much better at doing this with my animals than I am with my husband. Luckily, he's really tolerant. But it's so, so important. So how many times do you hear people saying, it's lazy, whether it's a dog or a horse? How do you say it's sluggish, it's grumpy? There's always a reason. And when you change it, it's like going right back to the start of our conversation. When my sisters say I'm a hothead, it really pisses me off, because most of the time I'm not now.
Yeah.
So I would say be really cautious and just watch how it changes. And also when you say thank you to your animals. So I am really, really lucky. My Romeo, my New Forest pony, I got wild off the New Forest as a 4-year-old. He is my best teacher. Absolutely love him. Anyone has the opportunity to get a wild pony, the best teacher you ever have. Now, he doesn't let me get away with anything, Lucy. So when I'm rude or disrespectful, like I'm talking on the phone when I'm with him or something, he will let me know about it. The other day, I was rushing to get in on an interview and it was pouring with rain and I wanted to be vain and put some makeup on and do my hair. So I was like rushing, putting his rug on, and he didn't really want a rug on. I wanted him to have a rug on because it was awful weather, but he was saying no. And I didn't listen to him and he bit me. And he's never bitten me before. It was 100% my fault, because he told me he didn't want a rug. He told me to stop rushing him because this is a special eating time. He knew I was being really rude and I prioritized something else, and he did it. And I just laughed and I was like, thank you. Yeah, I really deserve that.
Wow.
Because I really did. I'd been so rude to him, and I'd have done the same back. If someone had said that to me, I'd have done the same back. So language is so important. And when you've got people that can pick you up on it, it's so, so great. So my daughter's brilliant at picking me up on it. So we've got a 16-and-a-half-year-old dog that my husband's just walking around now. And my husband loves going slow with her and going things. And I'm a bit like, oh, come on. Because I'm a, and he's
corporate in us.
very zen. And it's so mean. So I think language is brilliant. It costs you nothing. Most of the stuff we're talking about here costs you nothing. And remembering to say thank you when they give you feedback, because if they think you're listening, suddenly they'll make your life so much easier, because they'll tell you more and more and more. And I tell you, initially you might panic you because you think, oh, I can't change them being on their own that much because I really can't get another dog at the moment. But they will plant the seeds and you'll think, yeah, but I could go out for a walk with my friend and their dog. Yeah. Or I could do a swap. And it will just, even though you might go into panic, I don't know the solution now, it will come to you. So just sit with it and just think, what little change every day can I make for the better?
I love that, Catherine, because it's the absolute model that I share with people. We don't need to know the how, just start allowing the flow to come through. Oh my gosh, I love it. Every time I speak to you, I'm like, I love you.
Me too. I can't believe how many synchronicities are. I mean, like the iridology and things like this. And it's just like, that's come up a couple of times. That came up with the roots people as well, and it's like, it's amazing, isn't it? Because so much of this we don't talk about. I didn't know about you, you didn't know about us, and it just starts putting the bits of the puzzle together. And every little step we all make in the right direction with ourselves or with our animals is appreciated.
Absolutely, we're creating new earth.
Yeah.
Now, on that point, Catherine, you do iridology on horses, which is freaking amazing. I love that. You're a therapist, but you also work with herbs and things like that, don't you? Now, I think you said that you're not actually doing the therapist side of things at the moment. So if people are listening to you and they're like, oh my God, Catherine, I need you in my life, like, how can they get in touch with you, or how can they, figure out if there's something or someone that they can work with from your community to basically help them? Because I do think a lot of people probably require your services, even if they don't know it at the time of us filming this.
Yeah, well, what I'm going to do, there's two things. So I've got two websites. I've got the Katherine Edwards Academy, which does explain what the different therapies are, but it's mainly my teaching site, because I've got loads more courses I'm trying to free up some time to do and not doing very effectively. Yeah. So at the moment, so I've got katherineedwardsacademy.com, and you've got the list, and then I've got katherineedwards.life. On the Katherine Edwards Academy, I've got some courses that you can do yourself, everything from short courses on cat nutrition, dog nutrition, how to use herbs with your horses and your dogs, and essential oils and things safely, first aid conditions, and I've got lots more coming soon. And I've got descriptions of some of what the therapies are in the blog, but you can't book that on there. Then on my katherineedwards.life, at the moment, my booking page is, you can see there's a consult page, but it's not allowing people to book in. And that's because I'm fully booked for the next few months, right. Although I do always keep a few emergency slots. But I do have some really good trained iridologists that are also very, very good in the other healing modalities and all the things we've started, because I teach an equine iridology diploma. So I can normally, if I'm not available, so what I say to people is, if at the moment you can't book automatically, because I've had to shut it off because I've just booked up for the next 3 months. But if it's an emergency, send me an email, and if I can't help, I should be able to help direct you to someone else's. And that's all over, because a lot of my clients are all over the world. And so that please do sort of contact. And then what I'm trying to do, Lucy, is a bit like you, is just put more courses and things out there for people, so people can empower themselves, because we want them to have the confidence to know what to look for themselves a lot of the time, rather than being, and of course you do need some therapists sometimes to come out and readdress a balance, and then how do you maintain it? So email, and then those two websites. I will be opening up my consults again probably in another 6 weeks, but if I do keep a few emergency, because I've obviously got quite a lot of existing customers I'm supporting, so don't be afraid to email me, and then if I can't help, hopefully I'll be able to direct you to someone. And the other thing I'd be interested to know, I was thinking of putting together, I just haven't worked out how to do it, a sort of a twice monthly sort of subscription where people pay a nominal amount, and then we get on a Zoom for an hour and a half sort of thing, so lots of people can ask their questions, to have a horse one, a dog one, a cat one, because quite often a lot of people have got the same questions and they'll learn a lot from other people's questions coming up as well.
Why don't me and you speak about that offline, Catherine, because the technology that I use would be perfect. It's exactly what I do. Basically, I do weekly sessions on some programs, monthly sessions on others, and literally just upload them and people can access them. You know, either they can attend live or they can access them. So do remind me, and I'm happy to share everything that I do so that it can support you. But it sounds perfect. Absolutely.
That's what I need to do to reach more people, because then one, it's very affordable for people, and also two, you can get, because a lot of people ask questions that you hadn't even thought about, and you're like, oh, fantastic, I can do that as well.
Absolutely. Now I'd be interested in your equine iridology. I'm so going to do that.
I absolutely love it. I only take a few students each year, so because it really is a holistic. It teaches you not only about how to be a brilliant iridologist and everything you need to know, but also goes into quite a lot of depth about acupoints, about herbs, about essential oils and everything, because of what do you do about it when you find it. I love that course so much. I'm really,
I'd be really keen for more details about that, so everyone else can get to the back of the queue.
My students have gone through it are absolutely phenomenal. So yeah,
amazing. Oh, Catherine, I love
so lovely. We're
so
going to
much
meet up in person, aren't we? We keep saying it. We'll do that, but I will definitely call you about that other stuff, because I need to get my head around how it could work. And you've got, and
I can show you the way that mine looks and feels, so that you can utilize that. And everyone's going to be like, tell me what technology now. Just drop me a message and I'll be able to share it with you. Catherine, thank you so much. I have learned so much from today. I am inspired. I really want to do another one of these with you as well, because I love the animals as much as you do. So thank you for your time. Have the most beautiful day. And ladies and gents, thank you so much for watching us this morning. And we will be back super soon with another video. All right.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks. See. Bye.